quadratic formula. So this is the final way to solve the equations. I expect you to know this. Quadratic formula is something that comes up often enough. It's not painted on my wall. I'm not going to write it on the board. This is one that you should know.
Caitlin loves quadratic formula.
I mean, it never fails.
Oh, no. It's her favorite thing.
So for this to work, it has to be in standard form. So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. But it does not matter if things are negative. A doesn't have to be 1. There's no other stipulations. So your x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
How did you come up with this?
Let's start with that. Man, that's so stupid. I got it wrong because that's what plus and minus is instead of having one addition and one subtraction.
Sure it's because you didn't have a negative in front of your first number?
Hey, listen here.
I will throw a piece of this crust custard at you.
Oh. That's not what's happening, dude.
You know, mess around and get protein ball.
Does everybody have this down? So we will do at least a couple examples of this more if needed. So if I asked you to solve this equation, what would you do first? All right. So if we do that, we get x squared minus 4x plus 2 equals 0. Does anything multiply to 2 and add to negative 4? No. So then we could use the quadratic formula. What's our a in this?
-4. Oh, sorry, yeah, 1.
A is 1, b is -4, and c is 2. So quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b, so the opposite of -4 is +4, plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. One thing, I think Mrs. Keller usually had you give decimals for this, and I don't want decimals. I want the exact values, so we're going to keep it in radical form. So let's go ahead and simplify from here. So this would be 16 minus 8, which is 8. How would I break down the square root of 8?
2, 2. So 2 square root 2.
So we get 4 plus and minus 2 square root of 2 over 2. And
we can
divide. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 square root of 2 divided by 2 is the square root of 2. So we get 2 plus and minus square root of 2. Is that okay? You guys try one.
Are getting to the triangle.
Alright, let's check. Which side did you move everything to? So we have 2x squared minus x plus 4 equals 0. So in this, our a is 2, b is -1, c is 4. So x equals the opposite of b, so the opposite of -1 is 1, plus and minus the square root of b, -1 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. Okay, -1 squared is 1. 4 times 2 times 4 is 32. So you get 1 plus and minus the square root of -31 over 4. What would you have to do with that?
Take out 9.
Okay, 31 is prime, so it doesn't break down. But then one final step, anytime we have an imaginary number, I do want it in A plus BI form, so we just have to break this apart. If it's a real number, you don't have to separate the fraction, but in the imaginaries, it is common to go ahead and do
Dang,
that.
I did it. You should be proud of
Good.
me.
I am proud of you. We have a lot of people that had a 17 under the radical. I'm not sure.
They did 4 times 1 times 4.
Oh,
Not 2.
instead of 2. Okay.
Still got a calculator.
Why don't we try another one? So the A is -3, the B is -2, the C is 5. So x equals opposite of B would be 2 plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So we get 4 plus 60, so that's 64. Square root of 64 is 8. We can keep going with this one because they are like terms. This is 2 plus 8 divided by -6 and 2 minus 8 divided by -6.
Why would I do that?
So 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 over -6 reduces to -5 over 3. 2 minus 8 is -6, and -6 divided by -6 is +1. So we get -5/3 and +1. Something wrong with that one?
No, I just had 2 of them.
Oh.
I don't know why, no.
All right, are we okay with this? Got
Yep.
that one? So when you get answers like this, what does that tell you about the original?
We could have done.
We could have done flip and slide. It would have factored nicely, but we still get the same answer. Okay, a couple more pieces we need to talk about today. Sometimes I don't really care what the answer is. I just need to know what kind of number it will be. These numbers that I'm finding, in terms of a graph, they are the x-intercepts of my graph. So when I look at this, I got 2 different numbers, so it would hit my x-axis twice. On this problem, we got an imaginary. What does that mean about the x-intercepts?
Only one. No, wait, there's not any. It doesn't have.
Right, we can't graph imaginary numbers, can we? So if you get an imaginary, that means you wouldn't have any x-intercepts. Would it be possible to have one
Yes.
x-intercept? How?
If it just sets on X, it doesn't.
Okay, if it bounces at that, what would cause it? What would cause me to solve this whole problem and only get one answer?
0.
If you have a 0 under the square root. Would you agree with that? Because you'd have something plus 0 and something minus 0. Plus 0 and minus 0 give you the same number. So we really have 3 options. Either we're going to get a graph that hits the x-axis twice, or we get a graph that hits the x-axis once, or we get a graph that never hits the x-axis. How do I know, without solving the whole thing, what it would turn out to be? Okay, looking at a graph, what part of the equation decides if it's going to hit or not?
Square root.
The square root. If you have a positive number under the square root, then we work out and we get 2 answers. So that means it's going to hit twice, right? If you get a negative number under your square root, what does that tell you?
We're gonna get none.
It's not going to hit because it'll be an I. And if you get 0 under the square root, it's going to bounce. It'll only hit once. So that thing under the square root is actually called the discriminant. So when I refer to discriminant, all I'm talking about is b squared minus 4ac. It does not include the square root itself, but we can use that if I need to know what kind of answers it'll be on my graph, but I don't actually want to solve the whole problem. So discriminant is b squared minus 4ac.
You have to write all that down.
If that is greater than 0, you get 2 real solutions. Or another way to think of that, it's 2 x-intercepts. If your discriminant equals 0, you get one real solution, or one x-intercept. It would have a multiplicity of 2. You get the same thing out twice. If it is less than 0, you get 2 imaginary solutions. In terms of a graph, that means there are no x-intercepts. So sometimes I'm going to ask you to find the discriminant and what it means. So the number is just the b squared minus 4ac. And then we can interpret that based on whether it's positive, negative, or 0. How would you know if this was rational or irrational? Do you guys remember? What's the difference between a rational number and an irrational number?
Rational is an
Can we
integer.
fraction?
Rational can be written as a fraction. Irrational can't.
That's pretty good.
So rational, something we could turn into a fraction, that means it had to have been a perfect square.
0.5.
So like 4, you can do the square root of 4. But if you got a 3 for your discriminant, can you do the square root of 3? No, so it's not going to be a pretty answer. So you might hear me mention that sometimes, rational or irrational. Basically, if it's a nice pretty fraction, that's rational. If you still have a square root, that's irrational. Okay, so I want to do a couple examples with this. Oh, sorry, did you still need?
Nope.
Okay. So I just want to find the number of solutions to this equation without actually solving it. So what I'm asking you to do is find the discriminant. So we set it up like the quadratic, so it has to be equal to 0. But then all I need is b squared minus 4ac. So my b is negative 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. So we get 25 minus 12, which is 13. So how many solutions do we get?
2 real.
Would they be rational or irrational?
You're,
Oh,
Because it's not a, yeah. Do we have to put solutions or can we just put 2 real?
Wait, what?
It's irrational because when you put this in the quadratic, you would have a square root of 13, and we can't do the square root of 13, so it's not going to be a nice number.
even if it's like square root of 8, would it be?
It's still
Because
irrational.
you'd end up with square root of 2.
All right, one more.
What is that?
Why? Okay.
So what would I need to do with this one first?
Subtract 1 half.
Yeah.
Okay, and then all I'm asking for is b squared minus 4ac, so my b is negative 1/4 squared minus 4 times 3/4 times negative 1/2.
Can't you do it? Right.
All right, so we get 25 over 16. So first of all, that's positive. So what does that mean?
It'll be real.
2 real solutions. Would these be rational or irrational?
Rational.
Rational, because this is a perfect square. You could reduce it. All right, do we need more like this?
Not exactly.
If there's no fractions, we're good.
Not
Oh.
particularly.
You have a calculator. Fractions aren't scary.
I need to grab a calculator.
All right, last thing I want to do. Last slide. Promise. Unless somebody asks the question, I should say.
Keep your mouth shut, I.
All right.
Oh my
What was
god.
that?
That's pi.
That's the question.
No, but
Oh, okay.
I want to solve this for D. So this
Oh,
is
you did this.
Get it by itself.
A equals pi D squared over 4. So if I want you to solve for D, we have to get D by itself. What would you do?
Times
times 5.
Times everything by 4, then divide by pi.
We should still do square root too.
So now we need to divide by pi. So we have 4a divided by pi equals d squared.
Square root.
Squared. Typically with the square root, it's plus and minus. I should have specified in here, d is a distance here, or is a diameter, distance across the circle, so it would have to be a positive number. I'm not going to make you simplify it beyond that or get the radical off the bottom or anything like that. I just want you to be able to manipulate an equation and get a variable by itself.
Can we do on the steps?
All right, you guys, want to do one more? Let's do one more.
Oh,
And this
Oh.
one's hard. Oh.
there's one more after this one.
So this is,
How'd you lie?
I said one slide. This is one slide.
She said we're doing one more though, so this is the last one.
So this is a formula for volume of a sphere, or like a ball. So all the variables here have to be positive as well. What would I do to solve for r?
Divide by 1/3 pi.
Divide by 1/3 pi. If you don't want fraction in a fraction, what's another way instead of dividing by 1?
Oh, shoot.
Would it be prettier maybe to multiply by 3? So then we have 3v equals pi r squared h. I'm trying to solve for r. All of this stuff is multiplied with it, so I'm going to divide by both at the same time. So I'm going to divide by the pi and the h. And then to get rid of a square,
Square root.
square root. Again, typically square roots we need plus or minus, but r is a radius, so it has to be positive. So that's my answer.
I never realized how bad I was at drawing the pi circle until now. Looks like my R's.
Are there questions on this?
Nope.
So there is a Math Excel assignment posted.